Eagles. Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Monday edition, an overreaction Monday edition of Birds 365 following a Week 6 win. Johnny Mack for the Philadelphia Eagles, 20-16, and they moved to 3-2 on the year. Got a great show planned for everybody today. Johnny Mack, how you doing on this Monday morning?
I'm doing fine. I don't know if the coach is doing fine, but I'm doing fine. Yeah.
What was up with that, John? We'll get into that. We got Jeff Kerr coming up in hour number 1. We have Chris Franklin coming up in hour number 2. We got great people playing today. We got to appreciate everybody in the chat for being here. Look, John, I'll say this, right? A win is a win. Is it fair to say that a win is a win, and that's what we take from this game, Johnny Mack? Before we get into the coach and
a win is a win, and I think if you look at the rest of the NFC East, a positive day overall for the Philadelphia Eagles from just a standing standpoint. And moving forward, I think, there's no reason they shouldn't win this division, can't win this division. But overall, I mean, yeah, a lot of stuff. I don't know what to make of what I saw yesterday, other than it was surreal. And it wasn't good. I know that. So from the standpoint of you should be talking about a win, albeit one without style points and all that nonsense, which doesn't matter at the end of the day. That's what you should be talking about. And we'll talk some about the football, I'm sure. But it was completely overshadowed by the behavior of the head coach, who seems to be at a point where, I'm framing it like this. Philadelphia's obviously tired and again, I'm saying the vast majority is obviously tired of Nick Sirianni. And I think we've reached the point to where it's reciprocal. And that is an ugly, ugly point. I think he's tired of it.
Yep. Well said.
And that's where I ended up after thinking about it and going, what the? Because that was bizarre. That was bizarre.
It really was to watch him do that. And it's just unbecoming of a head coach. I had an issue with it as a fan, just like, those are the people that support the team through thick and thin. Those are the people that essentially pay your salary with the way they support the football team.
I'm not going to go down that route either, because that's bullshit. But it's part of the job. And I guarantee you he got a talking to from Jeffrey Lurie after the game. I guarantee you that. Now, I'm not going to play into that because they're booing from the first 3 and out.
Well, yeah, but that's
so support the team through thick and thin. No, I'm not buying that.
Oh, bullshit, John. Philadelphia fans have been fan for 50 fucking years, John.
I'm saying I don't give a shit how you look at yourselves.
Yeah, well, I'm saying though, the support of the fan base
thick and thin. Thick and thin means thick and thin. Don't phrase it like that then. I'm not saying they're not passionate. I would argue they're too passionate. That's a different conversation. And that's where I get to the point. I got news for you. You may not want to hear it, but behind the scenes, they don't give a shit. But it's part of it. But it's part of running a business, playing into it's the most passionate fan base, which it is the most passionate fan base. Oh, we love the fan. And the same press conference where Nick Sirianni's, he's out there being Hulk Hogan, cupping his ear, taunting fans after a win, taunting his own fans after a win. And then he's out there, oh, we love the support. We're getting false starts. And then he was asked, well, what about the booing? What about the fire Nick chants? And we love the support when we get support, basically, which is what it is. But I mean, let's be honest, there's no quicker fan base in America that will turn on their team quicker than, and you could say it's high standards, fine. I have no problem with
Yeah, but
that.
turning on you in Philadelphia does not mean they do not support their team, John. Like look, these fans are lifelong fans. They bleed. They're
I'm
born
not
an Eagle fan.
arguing
They
that.
die an Eagle fan. Nick Sirianni is a blip in the radar in terms of that. I get what you're saying. They're hard on him. We are hard on him. But
Here's
to
how
say
I'll
we don't
describe it.
support through the hard times, I
Look,
think is wrong.
when Nick got upset about the slow starts and saying, well, the defense didn't start slow, and he's playing semantics. We're not talking about the defense. We're talking about the offense that has 1 first down on their starting drives. The only team in the NFL that hasn't scored in the first quarter. Do I really need to spell it out to you, head coach, what we're talking about? So I'll call him on that, but I'll say the same thing. Do I really need to spell it out to you what I'm talking about? I'm not talking about the stuff you're talking about. I'm talking about through thick and thin. That narrative is bullshit. That's it.
Sorry, I
It's
just
through bullshit. And if they're 3-14, guess what? This is a very entitled fan base because they've had an extensive period. I've always said the most entitled fan base is Green Bay because they've had Hall of Fame quarterback play for going on 30 plus years, and they don't know how the other half lives. Most of these teams have really, really bad seasons. The Eagles have the occasional blip in the radar and then get right back. Ever since Andy Reid got here, it's a very, very entitled fan base. And I'm not going to lie about that. Same as I'm not going to lie about Nick Sirianni playing cement. Oh, we're talking about slow. You know what we're talking about. We spell it out. The offense hasn't scored the first quarter. We're not talking about the defense.
Jalen Hurts mentioned it in his on-field interview after the game. He didn't even have to get asked about it by the press. He mentioned the slow starts.
Yeah, they know. So that part's bullshit, but there's bullshit from both sides, and that's why I say Philadelphia's tired of Nick Sirianni, and Nick Sirianni's tired of Philadelphia. And usually when that happens, it gets ugly.
Yeah.
And I think we're at the point where it's kind of getting ugly, and the only thing that's going to save it is just how bad the NFC East is. And probably the NFC North beating up on each other. Because those 4 teams got to play each other a bunch of times. And the Eagles are going to skate to the playoffs or should skate to the playoffs. And who knows? Maybe you figure things out by that point. But right now, that's the only way Nick Sirianni can save himself. And he's at the Doug Peterson point where I don't know if he wants to save himself. That's where I am.
I think you're right about that. I do.
That's where I am.
I
don't even know if he wants to save himself.
That's what yesterday was. It was a showing of I don't give an F anymore.
That's what I said.
Yep.
I'm writing that this morning for Sports Illustrated.
Yep.
And I use that term. I have this expletive out.
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck. That's exact term I've used.
Yeah, well, I think you might be right about that. And look, to be fair to him, somebody did put it in the chat. We are a pain in the ass to deal with. I'm not saying that. I would just push back on the notion that we bail on you when it's tough times.
They're bailing on Nick Sirianni. He's got the highest winning percentage in franchise history. He's made the postseason 3 times.
How do you define bailing? Booing at
do they want him out?
Is booing at games
again?
bailing?
And I'm not talking about everybody.
But John, I said this yesterday. He's not the coach of the Nick Siriannis. He's the coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. To say that we bail on the Philadelphia Eagles is wrong. Do we bail on Nick? Sure. But we do not bail on the Philadelphia Eagles.
That's fine. I'm fine with that. I'm not saying they bail on the laundry. They got the laundry in the closet. Doesn't matter who puts it on. They're rooting for laundry, as Jerry Seinfeld will say. I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, and I can't entirely blame Nick. We're a pain in the balls. I get it.
The assumption through thick and thin to me means the individuals on the team as well, which has never been the case. Now, if you want to have a different definition, I'll agree with you. Yeah, they ain't turning on the laundry ever. But that's laundry. they'll turn on the people wearing the laundry very, very quickly. Very quickly.
Let's get into some of the football yesterday, John. Like you said at the open, and I said this before we even started our post-game show yesterday. I'm like, that's a tough game to have a lot of takeaways in the football. And I thought Jalen Hurts had a nice game. I thought he was efficient with the ball. I thought he had a solid game. Obviously had that slow start again, but that's not all on him. John, I question the way that they try and get him ramped up into games. Like, why do we have 3 routes 30 yards up the sideline when the quarterback hasn't completed a pass yet? Can we make it a little bit easier? But I don't know the workings of it. Maybe Jalen checked into some of those plays. But from an offensive standpoint, I thought the team was solid. Defensively, I read that Deshaun Watson completed 100% of his passes in the second half. But then I look and I'm like, they had 9 freaking points on offense because they had the blocked field goal. So I can't beat up on the defense. It was one of those weird games. Football-wise, John, what were your takeaways from this game?
Yeah, well, very strong day for the defense, but again, yeah, I'm with you. I don't know how much you can take from that because Cleveland is so bad on offense right now. 2 reasons, mainly the quarterback, but also, I mean, they have so many injuries, and they lost Nick Harris, who's their backup center, early in the game, so they're down to their 3rd-team center. Then they lose Ford, their running back, who's their backup, and then they're down to their 3rd and 4th string running backs. I mean, the offensive line is all over the place. It's just a disaster. And then you have descending play. I don't know what happened to Amari Cooper, but he's not Amari Cooper anymore. You have descending players, most notably Deshaun Watson, but others. So, I mean, they should have dominated, and they pretty much did. As you mentioned, they didn't give up a touchdown. The only Browns touchdown was on the blocked field goal.
Yeah.
And in the modern NFL, I mean, that's as good as it gets, especially for a team that's struggling. Came in with 6 sacks. They got 5 sacks, 10 quarterback hits. Even Bryce Up got on the board. We'll see if they take it off the board for the poor guy.
Yeah. When will we find that out? I've since you said that on the post game, I've been waiting to look.
Usually happens Monday or Tuesday at the latest. If he makes it to Wednesday, he's good. But they had more pass rush than usual, but I don't know how that translates moving forward. We have to see it against better competition. And then even the offense and Lane Johnson called it constipated after the game.
That was a great quote.
I mean, yeah, Lane tells the truth. So, but you see the like the difference with AJ on the field. All right, we're in trouble, and some of it is, the comfort is all right. AJ on a go route, and he's pulling the football away from Martin Emerson or what whomever, and catching these crazy things, and that's where the consistency doesn't come in because you can't do that every time. But big spot again. And Kevin Stefanski, I mean, I would have went for it. You talk about a dumb team. They get 2 false starts when they're down. They're only in the red zone. Nobody was in the red zone all day. And Cleveland finally gets in there in the end. And they're on the cusp of going in. You get a false start, you get another false start. And then it becomes, and I heard some of the Browns reporters talking, and they said, well, you can't go for it there. But they're not getting the ball back. I saw this with Antonio Pierce. You're not getting the ball back. So you might as well take a shot in the end zone. It probably doesn't work. I'm going to say that. But the Eagles get the ball at, 3:54 left, and they're kneeling it out. Perfect 4-minute offense again. This team, as weird as it is, as crappy as they've been on offense, when they get the opportunity, they have the best 4-minute offense in football. They do. And I don't know why it takes them so long to figure it out, or I don't even know if it does take them that long to figure it out. I think it's more about execution. But I think a big part of it is Jalen Hurts. In that moment, he becomes relevant in the run game, and they're like, "Fuck, it's going to be the theme of the show against." They're like, "Fuck it, all right, we got to go win a game. Let's take the reins off Jalen in the run game," and then it becomes, you know, they win it with an option. He's quarterback draws, and he's getting 6 yards, and it's second and short, third and short, and they go win the game.
What'd you think of the Jalen play call that he checked to on the last play to ice it?
I mean, it worked. But by the way, I got our first person ever. I'm glad you brought that up. Oh, I want to give them credit. I have to look it up. Somebody actually said that's a bad decision, and it worked out. But if you
That
keep
was
doing it,
everywhere, yeah. I saw that all over the place.
are you serious? I talk about that all the time.
I know you do. I'm saying I thought yesterday was a case where I think it was obvious to people it was a questionable decision.
Well,
But
that is
because it
the
worked,
first time. That is the first time I've ever heard somebody say, "You know what? That's probably not a good decision, despite the result." Um, and yeah, it's probably not a good decision, despite the result.
I don't
And
have
you
too
see,
much. Yeah, I mean, I did think it was risky, boy. Whew. You're lucky AJ Brown's as good
well,
as
I
he
don't know
is.
how risky it was, but it was second in 11, I believe.
Well, you would have stopped the clock there, and I believe the Browns had one more timeout after that.
Yeah, but they were at where were they? Let me
So you
look.
put yourself in a 3rd and long where you're going to try and run to obviously extend the clock, and then
They're
eh,
they're
yeah,
they're they're second and 11 at their 48. So worst case scenario, even if it's intercepted. That I don't know if that wouldn't be the worst case scenario. That's why I say it. Even if it's intercepted, he caught it at the Cleveland 12. It's like a punt, and they're not going the distance with that offense with even one timeout. So I don't know how risky it was, but and again, if it's just an incompletion, then you can just run the ball and punt it, and who cares? Again, hopefully Braden Mann, you know, pushes him back inside the 20. But even if it's a touchback, um, it's not going to hurt you. So I don't know how risky it was against that team in that situation, but
that's
I
fair.
will agree it's not the best decision at that point. But it worked out. There's a
Right,
perfect
well,
example of what I talked about.
yeah.
And I don't know, you said you saw the bench. I never get it. You hear me on this show. Everybody doesn't. I
I
say it
just
all the
saw it
time.
a couple times browsing yesterday, and I think a couple people in our chat said it as well. Tough decision, but I mean,
Good.
look, you go to your playmaker there. I don't have too much of a problem with it. I would just say if it didn't work out, it might have been it might have been
I
judged
mean, against
harshly.
against a different opponent, and maybe
Yeah,
that
right.
entered
I think
into
you added some
Jalen.
really good context there.
Yeah, and maybe that factored into Jalen's decision, the opponent. And if it did, you have to give him credit. It's never going to say yes or no, but he lost the game in Seattle by doing that. That different circumstance, obviously, but if he was patient there, you probably get a field goal and win the game. But you know, yeah, I didn't think it was a great decision, but
Any update?
it worked out. So, but maybe people were so upset about the play as a whole.
Yeah, worked out. John, I'm sure that the answer to this is no, but just for the people in the chat that are asking for it, we have no updates on the injuries, right? I mean, we're not going to have them for at least probably till tomorrow or Wednesday.
No, yeah, probably. Well, they'll have to
Probably
put in an
longer.
injury report. Jordan was Mailata on crutches,
Yeah, that
not
looks
feeling
bad.
well. Yeah, so I don't think Jordan Mailata is going to be back quickly.
I mean, I put out after the game that could be your biggest takeaway of this game. Seriously, if you lose Jordan Mailata for an extended period,
Yeah,
that's going to be a
and I think
problem.
then you got to start thinking about Mekhi Becton at left tackle
Yeah,
and Tyler Steen at
right. Yep.
left right guard. But there's so much movement you got to have around. I don't know if you want to do that. Um,
Yeah,
We'll see. We'll see
Yeah.
with Jeff Stoutland. I mean, Fred Johnson held up, but it was a very short period. They actually won the game with Fred. So, but yeah, I don't know if that's sustainable because you saw what happened in Tampa Bay. I don't know how many pressures he gave up. I stopped counting, but and that was at right tackle. You can imagine at left tackle.
Good stuff, John. We have 2 super chats. There's a bunch of dudes we got to talk about, and we'll do that. We got Jeff Kerr coming up. Can't wait to talk to Jeff. Jeff, I got a feeling this is going to be a good one for us, brother. After Nick Sirianni starts mouthing off to the crowd, we got a good segment coming up. But I got to talk about Moro Ajomo, Johnny Mack making plays out there. Cooper DeJean. We'll talk about Cooper DeJean. Before we get to our commercial break, let's rip some 2 of these super chats we got from Mark and Prince. Appreciate you both. Mark checks in. Eagles could have easily scored again in the final minute, making the final score 27 or 28-16. This win had plenty of quality, blowout or not. The 23 Eagles do not come back to win this game. I don't know, Mark. I did see some semblance, but I see what you're saying there. I mean, take away the blocked field goal, this game wasn't even close, but that obviously tipped the scales a lot going into halftime. Appreciate your super chat, John. John, any response to Mark before I move on?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know, comeback? What are they coming back from? I mean, coming back from
they didn't come back. I mean, they were up the whole game. But
so I don't know. I mean, if the block field, and that's a great individual play by Myles Garrett for people
that was insane, that play.
Yeah, I mean, but and that was just dumb decision making to put him in a position to try a 57-yard field goal. By a bunch of people, not just the head coach, although the head coach took credit for it. That's another thing. That guy's, if people can't figure out what he's doing there, I can't help you. He's just trying to fall on his sword and be admirable or whatever, altruistic, whatever you want to call it, to try to protect everybody else. But yeah, if you look at that situation that pushed him back to a 57-yard field goal, that's really the ugly part. But yeah, they didn't come back from anything. Now, again, Cleveland had a chance to win the game when it got down there and started false starting all over the place. But yeah, then we would have seen something. But obviously, they shot themselves in the foot.
Yep, I said that last night repeatedly on the post-game show. Prince checks in. Since Shane left, this team has consistently had a slow start with the new offensive coordinator. Who is in charge of the game plan? The game plan is the problem.
Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore.
There you go. That's 7 times John just said Kellen Moore for your Prince. I hope he answered your question. Good stuff there. We'll get to our commercial break. Jeff Kerr. Looking forward to talking to Jeff coming up next here on Birds 365. Before I get to our break, let me tell you about the great people at BetUS. Look at that promo code on the screen, everybody. Up to 150% sign-up bonus using the promo code YouTube150. So go to betus.com.pa and use that promo code, and then you get 125% on your second and third deposit, and it's all up to $2,000. So deposit less and bet with more at betus.com. They have the fastest payouts in the industry, 24/7 customer support, and they'll even give you your own custom account manager. So go check out BetUS today, a big sponsor of JAKIB Sports, so we appreciate them for sponsoring the show. We'll be back in 3 minutes with the greatness of Jeff Kerr coming up next.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.